Hello and welcome to Better Under Pressure. I'm Sara Milne Rowe, author of The Shed Method and founder of Coaching Impact. And in this podcast, I talk to leaders from all walks of life about being better under pressure and using pressure for better. I want to explore how we handle pressure in a world that is becoming more and more complex, the impact that pressure has on our ability to perform at our best, and what we do to be better under pressure.
I remember particularly growing up in the NHS as my career was developing, where I was less clear about how my role contributed to the organizational vision or, organizational strategy. When I wasn't clear, my job wasn't fulfilling. Start with why. Why is this important? Why is it that we do what we do, and why do we need to do it well? And then it just gives people a sense of purpose. I think that sense of purpose is important, because otherwise it's just a job. And in the NHS, it's not a very well-paid job. How do you give people more than what the job gives them if they look at it as just a job?
Today, I'm talking to Tendai Wileman, Chief of Staff and Director of Organisational Change at Guy's and St Thomas's NHS Trust. Tendai grew up in Zimbabwe and went to university in South Africa before completing an MBA at Warwick Business School. Over 2 decades, Tendai has held various corporate and operational roles in healthcare and has spent the last 10 years leading large-scale change within and across functional and organisational boundaries. She's a sponsor of the LGBT+ network at Guy's and St Thomas's and is passionate about diversity and inclusion, believing strongly that which unites us all is greater than that which separates us. In our conversation, Tendai shares her desire to keep learning and saying yes to the discomfort zone, finding the balance between the external and the internal, and the questions she asks her NHS team when they're all under pressure. Welcome. Very, very good to talk to you, and particularly because you work within the NHS. And as I said to you when we first spoke, I've not had anyone on Better Under Pressure from the NHS, and I've wanted to, for obvious reasons. I think the range of various different pressure points within the NHS will be fascinating to talk about, and also just how you generally manage that. Not just your own pressure, but the very many people that you come into contact with will be fascinating. So how does pressure turn up for you, Tendai?
So I think I probably always feel some sort of pressure. So I think it is probably quite normal. And by pressure, I mean just I need to get stuff done. I am generally very driven. So that drive then puts me under pressure to deliver. So I suppose that's how. So I in the context of everyday life, I'm trying to get something done. If it's at work or with the kids or with family. So all of that. So it's pretty much a constant, I think.
And has that always been the case with you, that sort of energy? I mean, it's almost like, it sounds like an energy, a really positive, in a way, driving energy for you. Has it always been a positive force for you to get things done?
I think so. And I suppose positive is interesting, isn't it? So I think it's probably driven from a place of I haven't done enough, or I'm not doing enough.
Okay.
A place of, wanting to do more and be better. I think there's always been a pressure to be better. And I think I'm always trying to catch up with myself and the standards I've set for myself.
Yeah.
I think it has always been a context, a constant. And I think even from a young age, there were high expectations. My parents thought I was very clever and, I would become a doctor, or I would, do something amazing. So I think I always felt that, because they said, you're smart and you're going to do it. And, and then when sometimes things didn't pan out in the way that I had hoped or they had hoped, then there's that disappointment, and then the anxiety and the desire to almost make up for it.
Yeah, so that's interesting, isn't it? That phrase you use there around, I've always felt I need to catch up with myself. Like, that, I suppose that's another way of saying, that whole thing of I'm not good enough, or I need to be better. And I wonder how, I mean, this is what's so interesting about this for me, is how do we turn it into something that actually is enough? So we're enough. And so it becomes an energy that actually just allows us to grow rather than fighting for something. It feels like underneath that is something we're fighting for something.
I guess that's interesting for me as well, because I suppose if it was enough, then I wouldn't strive. Then I think I would probably become more complacent. So I think it's
Okay.
yeah. So I think it's that. It's a positive, for the most part. It's a positive pressure. It's motivational.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When isn't it?
I think when it becomes crippling, I think because I am driven and because I like to get things done, I get more things to do.
Yes.
So I think sometimes it it can get to a point where I could feel a bit overwhelmed, and I think I've learned to recognize when that is happening. So I'm very thoughtful about what I need to do, given the pressure in my life. I know I need to manage it. So I need to look out for those signs when I'm feeling like it's probably getting a bit much and I need to stop.
What are those signs for you, Tendi? I think that's very interesting. How do you recognize those signs when it turns into something that's tipping into overwhelm rather than positive?
So I think there were a couple of times last year that I think I got quite when you get to a point you think I can't keep going. And I was probably getting a bit emotional. So when a small thing triggers me, then I know, okay, context is important, and actually I probably need a break. And that will happen. Let's say I haven't had enough sleep, or I just keep going. So I do just keep going, and it's almost like my body needs to tell me that actually you
Yeah.
need to stop. So emotionally, I start to read the signs. I mean, this is also coinciding with me being perimenopausal, which I'm reading about. So,
Yeah.
so the emotional side could be driven by a number of things. But I do think when I see it, when my body tells me, then I think, okay, I need to pay attention. So I'm all for talking about stuff. I'm all for, if you need therapy, if you need counseling, if you need, whatever it is you need to support you. I'm definitely, I guess, not of the same generation as my parents, of course, but also I'm Zimbabwean. I'm African.
Mhm.
We just get on with stuff, I think. And obviously I can't speak for everyone who is like me, but I can speak for my experience in my family. And I grew up in Zimbabwe, and there wasn't pressure that you couldn't cope with. You just got on with it. You just got up every day and you kept going, because there wasn't really an alternative. And I think that's sort of my mindset generally. So it's interesting now. I think we're at a time when actually I think post-COVID people are leaning into, you don't have to be okay all the time. You don't have to
Yeah.
be super resilient. Actually, there are things that are more important, like your mental well-being. So I get that, and I'm trying to learn to prioritize that as well.
Yeah. And it sounds from what you're saying that you're really good at spotting that in others as well. I have a question underneath it as to whether, I mean, I say it because I know it of myself as well. I'm really good at spotting it in other people, and maybe not so good at honoring it sometimes when the pressure. I mean, I recognize what you're just saying there is that there are some signs in my body, normally my tonsils, actually, my throat is the thing that says, right, if you don't stop now, Sarah, it's going to
Yeah,
go into something longer. So listen up.
yeah.
Um, uh, so yeah, I'm just interested in that balance between the outward attention versus the inward attention.
Both of those are absolutely important, and I think the other way I suppose I spot that it's getting a bit much, or I'm not coping as well, is in how I'm interacting with other people.
Mm.
So a couple of times last year when I was getting a bit, this is a lot. I noticed that I was obviously a lot more short-tempered, and I wasn't a pleasant person at home. So with my husband, with my kids, so I can see when those interactions are a bit more terse or just not helpful and impatient and all of that. I can see the impact on other people, and then I can feel my body telling me, okay, enough. And sleep as well is a big part of that. If I don't get a good night's rest, there's an issue. Generally, I don't get enough hours sleep, but when I sleep, I sleep really well. I'm out, you know. And then when it's a bit restless and I can't switch off, then I think, okay, there's something going on. I need to pay attention. I need to, well, either delegate, say no, prioritize, do something different, or else I'm going to not be able to keep going.
Yeah. I again relate with the sleep. You sort of have to find out what it is for you that actually really does make the biggest difference.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Do your family tell you that, or is that something you recognize?
They've started to tell me. They tell me. Right. They tell me. Or yeah, they do. I have 4 children. I have 2 stepsons and I have 2 daughters. My daughters are very good at saying, you know, something's going on and why that face, and you know, so they tell me, and my husband will say, you know, I'm not sure that was quite warranted. So they call me out, which is helpful, but I can also just see sometimes from their reactions when I'm being unreasonable.
Yeah.
So it's just, it's paying attention to all of that.
Yeah. And when you are managing so many people at work, it's interesting, isn't it, that the people at home are the ones that get the least amount of energy because you've run out of it, right? But when you're at work with all of the multiple responsibilities that I know you hold, what do you see as the key pressures that you have to and you want to actually manage well?
I need to make sure that I'm leading my team in the right way. So I feel like I have to inspire and motivate, and I need to keep them going. I think we have very difficult jobs in the NHS, as I'm sure you can imagine. So it can be hard to find a way through or to see a way through. So generally I am that, you know, positive, okay, we need to do this. I try and be really clear about what it is we need to do and how we need to work differently. I try and provide that guidance and support, but then also genuinely open up to, you know, they have the answers as much as I have, and you know, it's all about how we work together for the common good. So I feel like as long as I am showing them, so I'm definitely very, very hands-on, and I try and lead by example. But you know, then definitely, you know, muck in and just make sure that they feel supported and that they feel able to be their best, and you know, that they're paying attention to their workloads, to their, you know, physical and mental well-being and all of that. Because I mean, the good thing about COVID and what we've been through is there is a greater focus on health and well-being and the well-being bit. So we do major on that in the NHS, and I feel like I have to listen, I have to respond to how people are feeling and try and be that support for them so that they can be their best at work.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned a few things in there as well about how you do that struck me, in terms of I need to inspire and connect them to the common good. That seemed to be something that you emphasized in the way of lifting people out of the sort of everyday pressure, and also the clarity of what needs to be done.
I remember particularly sort of growing up in the NHS. So just you know, as my career was developing, I think where I was less clear about how my role contributed to the greater, you know, to the organizational vision or, you know, organizational strategy. When I wasn't clear, my job wasn't fulfilling. I think I'm definitely okay. Start with why. Why is this important? Why is it that we do what we do, and why do we need to do it well? And then it just gives people a sense of purpose. I think that sense of purpose is important, because otherwise it's just a job. And in the NHS, it's not a very well paid job. So
No.
it's almost the
Yeah.
how do you give people more than what the job gives them if they look at it as just a job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you give an example, Tendai, of how if you go to a moment of pressure within the NHS, I'm sure there are many on a daily basis, but if you were to give me an example of when you have actively seen the pressure and as the leader needed to do all of these things that you've just said, I'm just trying to make it incredibly real for people in terms of how do you do that? Because it's so easy, I think, with this stuff to say, oh yeah, you need to, inspire. I mean, I work with many leaders, and that's actually a massive question. How do they connect to their own inspiration so that they can then, my words, contage others, so that they find that extra bit of energy to see through the current circumstance or pressure? How do you do that?
So what I try and do is be really clear about, okay, are we clear about what we're trying to do? Are we clear about the problem that we're trying to solve? And is there that shared understanding? Because I think if you start there, then it's that, okay, so we're trying to do the same thing. Okay, so this is what we need to do. We need to clarify the governance arrangements that we have in place, and so that we can support delivery of organizational objectives, priorities. Does everyone understand why this is important? And what if we don't have it in place, the risks that we're exposing the organization to. So you sort of try and get that, okay, we're really clear about the problem. And then I try and say, okay, what are the different perspectives, just so we align. Okay, so this is the problem. What are the different ways into this? And do people have really clear lines, clear red lines? What are the things that actually wouldn't work? And have we challenged ourselves about what those things are? So let's have red lines that are true red lines, and not just because I don't want to do this, I don't want to work in this way, I don't want to have to report to that committee. But then holding on to, okay, why is this important, and what are we trying to do? And then it is that getting the different views. Okay, how can we make this work? Given that you have concerns in this area, okay, how can I help you mitigate that concern? And remember what it is we're trying to do. Okay, so I think it's a constant going back to what is it that we're trying to do? What is the problem we're trying to solve? And then how can we align the various perspectives? Because ultimately we all agree that this is the thing that we're trying to do together and do it jointly. So I suppose I think I do that a lot, and I find I have to do more of that in terms of the not quite North Star, but that whole, let's hold true to what it is we're trying to do as an organization. And I think in the NHS, the one thing that we all align on is doing the best and the most that we can for the patients and the populations that we serve, and then also for our staff, because we know that without our staff, then we can't provide the care that we need to for our patients. So people get that, and people align on the why. We want to be, so for my organization, we want to be the best example that the NHS has. And we know that there's a lot we need to do to fix to get that right. But we all want that, and we're aligned that we want that.
I love this, Tendai, because it makes so much sense to some of the teams that we work with. Is like sometimes it can get under pressure and under the speed of what needs to be done and the increasing amount that needs to be done in a shorter amount of time. This shared intent can get lost within the task. And I do believe what we're seeing is that the leaders that are really great at just keep this sort of constant drumbeat around the why. Why are we doing this? As opposed to it just coming out on a strategic document once every 4 months, but actually in everyday conversation, this ability that you're talking about of lifting people into these sort of, sounds like simple questions, but actually fundamental questions of why are we doing this? What's the problem we're trying to solve? And joining together all and listening, I'm hearing as well, to all the various different perspectives before actually getting into the task. It feels incredibly important, more so than ever, actually.
Yeah, no, it is. And it's just, it's feeling really tough as well, just everywhere. I recently joined a group of sort of peers and senior leaders, but across different industries. So I guess a learning set. And it's amazing how much similarity there is. I thought I would have nothing in common with someone who's dealing with cashless payments and all sorts, but fascinating stuff. I'm like, oh wow, that's amazing. But actually it's people, it's vision, it's alignment, it's relationships, it's where we're trying to get to, and how can we work together. I think everywhere is just experiencing that things are just that much harder. So, what are the things that you can address? What are the things that are within your gift? How you make people feel about themselves is something that you can do. How you make people feel supported is something that you can do. That's within your gift. Some of the other bits that you can't control. But I think there is something about let's pay attention to the whole person. I think I try and see the whole person in front of me. I mean, this is with work, with friendships, with what's going on for that person. That means that they're showing up in that way, because it could be. I mean, if you just looked at interactions in that sort of black and white, where I could say, okay, what's going on here? What have I done? Or you could just think, I think they might be going through stuff, and because of that, I might need to, just pay attention and listen, and maybe not react if it's not a positive interaction.
As I listen to Tendai, I'm reminded about how much courage it actually takes to slow down enough in order to create the clarity of the shared intent and shared vision that she's talking to us about. She mentions so many powerful ingredients that we too often overlook because we get caught in the trap of cracking on through tasks and everyday transactions. We encourage ourselves to push on through, to go faster, to keep going, and in so doing, we lose alignment, sometimes with ourselves and often with our teams. When we choose to slow down, we can actually go faster because we take the time to listen to various perspectives rather than get irritated by them, to co-create the solution, to join everyone up, and as Tendai reminds us, to learn together and to align. If we're not careful, pressure can force us into thinking that something or someone is right or wrong, or that idea is good or bad, allowing the pressure to shrink our perspective, turning our back on curiosity. I was really struck when Tendai said, when I wasn't clear, my job wasn't fulfilling. How many of us can relate to that? When we ask team members the question, what prevents you from doing your best work? One of the most common responses we get is, when I'm unclear about how what I'm being asked to do connects to the bigger picture. I want to recap on what Tendai asks her team when the pressure is on. And it's interesting because the NHS has a powerful why, and yet what she's emphasising is how important it is, despite that, to slow down and really connect to it in moments of pressure. Here's what she asks. Are we clear about what we're trying to achieve together? What's the problem we're trying to solve? And do we have clear lines to solving it? As she says, when you're under pressure, it makes a difference if you keep 4 things front of mind. Clear vision, checking in with your people, regular alignment, and relationships. 4 powerful reasons to slow down. When you go to the shared intent, when you go to the bigger picture, when you go to the why, what does it do for you?
So I think it does help. It definitely grounds me. You can then see a point to doing something, because I think I need to feel a sense of purpose. I need to feel like I can, the work I'm putting in will actually lead to a positive outcome. So I think as long as I feel that, as long as I have that in mind, then it's easier. I think it's when I lose that
Yeah.
you lose me, I suppose. The
Yeah.
organization loses
Yes.
me. When I've moved from roles, I think it's when there has been that disconnect between what I'm doing and that sort of sense of purpose and the ability to make a difference.
Yeah. Did you have a model where you learned that, Tendai? Did you, I mean, what is it that keeps you strong to that? Is there something that lifts you up to that ability?
I think it's probably just developed over time. I don't know that I have necessarily thought in that way, but I do try and read a lot, and I listen to people, and I try and, I guess, make sense of how I feel. So it's always helpful. So, for example, if I take, the sort of Start With Why and Simon Sinek,
Yeah.
all of that, it made sense. As soon as I came across it, it made sense to me. And then it's almost like, yes, that's it. Find more and more people like that. And I suppose it then reinforces how you think, how you view the world, and if they start to inform each other, really. I think that's how it's happened. And then I think over time, as I've gotten older, you feel a bit, I have a long way to go, but you feel a little bit wiser each day.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
feel like you are learning, and I've always been one. I'm always up for learning. I think you learn from everything. You learn from every interaction. You learn from people. I don't think there's ever someone who can't teach you anything, either about yourself, about a situation, about what to do, what not to do. There's always something you can learn. So I think because I'm like that, because I'm curious and I'm interested, and I want to be a better version of myself, for myself. I think it's that you set the standard. When I talk about catching up to myself, that's the standard I have for me. It's not anyone else's measure. So it's when I don't know, and I don't think I'd ever want to feel enough, like I've done enough, because then what do you do next? Like I might as well not be here. So there's always that. And as long as I have that, I'll keep going. I think it's interesting as I'm getting older, and I have friends that are older, I can see what drives most people. There's a sense of purpose. There's something going on. And then you think, how well are we preparing people for that point when it isn't work or it isn't other things? It's almost the next phase of life.
Absolutely.
And I can't even work out what that next phase is anymore. I just think it's a different phase. So it's almost, I want in every single phase to be doing something, So I think I'm also moving away from, and I think a lot of people are moving away from the concept of retirement. I think it's just a change, it's a change. I'm now going to focus on this, but I think we all need something that keeps us under pressure to learn, to be better, to do better. And I think so for me, it's largely positive. It's largely positive until it's not. And when it's not, you need to pay attention to that and look after yourself.
Yeah.
But otherwise, don't you want everyone to
so agree.
Pressure?
So agree. And it's so pertinent, actually, Tendai, talking to you now, because I'm running my first retreat next week. And I'm calling it Legacy Moves. And it's about exactly that, because I met so many leaders that I was working with, and they'd say, normally they're looking for something else, either within the organization that they're working. What's the next phase for me in this organization? How do I want to lead differently? I'm on a evolution of next. Or they're saying, have I got another corporate job in me? There's something else I want to do. I don't know what it is, but there's another phase of evolution, and there's more of me to emerge. And I haven't got enough space in my life at the moment to really address it. So we're taking 4 days next week. Actually, we're going to Portugal, and we're just taking this space for precisely the reason you've just described. And I think I never want to retire, but I want the next phase to keep. I never want to. The idea of coming to the stop of something is just hideous for me. I mean, that's just not what I want to do. And that's basically what's behind this whole Better Under Pressure concept, is that what you've just so beautifully described just there is, why would you not want to keep evolving? And if a little bit of pressure allows you to keep expanding, brilliant. I mean, that's what pressure does for me.
Absolutely. And I think, so, so I'm an exec. So, the concept of developing our execs for the next thing, that we understand that. What we don't do so much, and I think this is across the board, is look at not the up and coming or the established, but just the other ones that are on the other, at the other end of their career, maybe in that particular organization or particular sector, but that the what next bit, where previously we thought the what next is retire and go fishing. I don't know what next meant. I think now, what next? If I think I could live to be 100, oh my goodness. So what happens between now and me being 100? Like,
agreed.
So I think we have to pay attention to that. And I think we're an aging, not an aging population, but people are living longer.
Yes.
That's what I mean. People are living longer. So you want to live and continue to grow. Well, I think most people do.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
And that sort of forces you to really think in a different way and ask yourself, what else?
No, it does. And I think even, so there are things that I'm not necessarily comfortable with, like public speaking, or I don't generally put myself out there. I don't generally go out of my comfort zone, I think. And then I thought, what if I just started saying yes to stuff? If someone asks me to do stuff that is generally makes me feel a bit uncomfortable, just say yes. And then once you've committed, oh my goodness, you have to turn up.
Yes.
Right. So this is what's happened. So I think you reached out after I'd spoken on a panel, but again, that came and I thought, just say yes, just go for it. And then I think as a result of that, there's just been more of these types of things, or just opportunities that, yes, completely out of your comfort zone, but if you say yes, what's the worst that could happen? So I think there's that as well. And what's the worst that we could have a really great conversation, or we might not, and either one of those is fine. It's almost that I'm trying to, you go through the different options. You're like, okay, if I can live with the outcome of that, and it'll be terrible, and there'll be awkward silences, and and then it's fine. Just delete the recording. It's okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think it is that pushing yourself just that much further, and once you do that, it just, you keep doing it. So I think I'm learning to do more of that.
Yeah. And what I love about that, well, there's so many things I love about that, actually, Tendai, but first of all, you would never have known that you didn't feel comfortable on that panel. I'm just saying that to anyone who's listening to this, because you were absolutely an expert on that panel. But what I really love is this idea of how, see, somebody said to me the other day, if I hear the word push, it's a real trigger for me. And I think for me, it's about, what's the story you're running around all of these words and these meanings? Because push for me is like, how do I make push an enlivening word, And maybe it wouldn't be push, maybe it would be growth, maybe it would be what next, I don't know. But I think it's about owning how we respond. I had Neil Malarkey on the podcast recently, and he's an improv expert. And anyone who knows anything about improvisation, there's a real sense of yes and, right? In terms of being able to work with the actor in front of you. And he talks about this concept of the offer, that whatever anybody says in an improvisation is an offer. So you take the offer. So if you say, hello, I'm a doctor, you can't say, no, you're not. You know, I've really been reflecting on that. And I said to him on the podcast, and I'm going to write something about this, but what if we saw pressure as an offer?
Yeah.
It's an offer. What do you want to do with me? You know, you can equally say no, but if you saw it as an offer rather than a force that's coming in that wasn't asked for, it would shift it.
I think that's right. I think it is an offer, and then you can decide how you respond. I think, as with most things, everything is a choice. There's a situation that's happened. What is the right response? What is the best response? And there's the human, more considered response, or there's the emotional response.
Dog brain, we call it the dog brain response. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's trying to manage, what do I do in this situation? And I think if we just allowed ourselves to just think about your next move, just think about your next step, be thoughtful about how you want to feel post this choice.
Yes.
You know, it's an offer. How do I feel? And almost thinking far ahead to, okay, how do I want to be, at the end of this? How do I want to feel? So I guess everyone has different ways of making sense of the world for themselves. I try and do it through concepts. If things resonate, I'm like, yes, that's it. I get that. It's almost, there's books you read and it's not quite for you. Yes. And then there's some you're like, absolutely.
Yeah. That's exactly the sort of principle that we've put in the chef method, is that whole idea of we have these two operating systems. We have the sort of the human, slightly slower one, and then we have this fast emotional one, and we're constantly doing a deal with them. Like who's bossing who here? And being in control of it and having a moment of choice. And however we as human beings give ourselves that moment of choice is very varied, but you do need to know how you do it yourself.
I am really interested in I guess in that retreat and what maybe not for this conversation, but just how are you going to get into that? And it's interesting, and especially that much time. I don't think we give ourselves enough thinking time and thinking.
I totally agree.
Space. We're just thoughtful through my workplace, just the need for those kinds of, let's step away from the day-to-day. Let's actually think about who we are, what we're trying to deliver, what our vision is, all of that, what we need to focus on. So I don't know how we can do that and do the business as well sometimes, because that it's almost, that's really, really important, but it takes you away from the doing of the business.
I remember when I was a teacher, because I was a teacher for 13 years in quite challenging London comprehensives, which I call my unintentional MBA in self-leadership, by the way.
I think you'd have been a great teacher.
Thank you, Tendai. I will take that. But what was interesting is I was offered an opportunity to go and work for 10 days at the National Theatre. Instead of taking, so it was in your Easter holiday, so the schools had shut, but you could go and then choose to do almost like a mini sabbatical, 10 days only, but you were working in the National, and you had an amazing opportunity to watch rehearsals, do breathing exercises with real, experts. And I chose to do that. And it was a real wake-up call for me around the power of stepping away and not necessarily taking a holiday or resting, but having a different type of experience, which was almost more rejuvenating.
Absolutely. So I think it was a couple of weeks ago in the FT Financial Times edit, there was an article about a new job, a new opportunity being as good as a holiday. It's almost the energy you get from that. So when we say we're exhausted and we're tired and we need a change, or sometimes it is just a shift. Almost I sometimes feel I need to re-engage my brain in a different way. And when I'm doing the same thing, when I'm dealing with the same issues and, and it's just this relentless cycle, I think then I lose a bit of myself. So it's that even within my current role, what can I do to keep me fresh, to keep me interested?
Yeah.
And then if it's not that, what do I need to do differently? And as much as I'm absolutely terrified, having worked, 20 years in the NHS, I'm thinking, I don't know if I want to do another 20 years in the NHS. Maybe I want to do 20 years somewhere else, So I'm open to all of that. And I think what I've been really thoughtful about is how do I keep the essence? And I know, of course I can, but the essence of who I am and what drives me and what's important. I think it is quite easy in healthcare to find your why and your purpose and your North Star. It's pretty much given to you. And if you are that way inclined, it's just, the two just become one.
Yes.
So in the next phase or whenever that phase is, what will I still feel the same way and the same pressure and the same motivation to get up and do better? And if it's I don't know, making whatever something completely different.
Or it might be the same North Star, but you want to do it in a completely different way. That's what's interesting. It's and that I think is what a lot of the people that are coming next week are chewing over. It's like, it's not necessarily doing something totally different, but it's finding a different way to achieve more for that meaning, for that purpose, for that North Star.
No, and I guess my version of that, and it'll be 3 days, I think in June. So that, I'm thinking 3 days, what am I going to do for 3 days with? Like, honestly, I'm like, a day I can get, 3 days. What do we? But I'm up for it. I'm up for it.
Yeah. It gives you a whole way of reinvention, doesn't it? In terms of and I think it makes you go. Sometimes, ironically and counterintuitively, I certainly found this when I went and spent time in the National Theatre. I went faster when I went back, not necessarily faster in a speedy way, but I had more ideas. I had different ideas. I had, I found myself getting excited about my own lessons. You know what I mean? Because I'd been excited by some different approach. So it was still drama, but I'd come from a different angle into drama. And how can I take that back into the classroom that will impact the lives of the children I'm teaching in a different way?
No, definitely. And I find with those sorts of interactions, when I'm with people, I guess sometimes completely outside of the NHS, I come back and I feel like, there's a whole world out there. Who knew? You're learning from each other and you're realizing that there's so much. And I love this, and I don't know who the original quote is from, but there's more that unites us. There's more that we have in common than that which sets us apart. It's almost, there's all these opportunities, and if we just opened ourselves to those kind of interactions, then wouldn't life and just everything be so much better and just easier? And because I think at the end of the day, I think if I wish people could just look past the veneer or past the surface, because there's just so much learning and so much richness in interactions across sectors, different people, all of that. And we should just embrace that.
There's a bit of a theme going on here, and one that I feel is increasingly important for all of us: the value of stepping away from the familiar. I made a commitment to myself last year to step away more, to enter unfamiliar spaces and be amongst different minds, to have new experiences, to feel the unknown more, to let my mind wander rather than constantly driving it to focus and hit goals. And yes, it felt odd at times, but overall it was massively invigorating, and I will continue to do it. Creating variety and difference is expanding and rejuvenating. As Tendai says, there's a whole world outside the NHS. There's a whole world outside every single environment we are sat in, a host of new opportunities. And unless we deliberately choose to enter spaces and experiences that are unfamiliar, meet people with differing perspectives to widen our sense of what is possible, We limit who we can be and what we can achieve. Pressure can encourage us to keep our heads down in the familiar. It's tough and takes discipline to choose to step away. Yes, a discipline to step away from the habitual doing and constant noise of every day. I think Tendai puts it beautifully when she simply says, if we opened ourselves up to more opportunities, wouldn't life be so much better? You used that phrase, catching up with myself. It could almost be replaced, I think, in, evolving myself, growing myself.
Yeah.
It feels less, that's what I mean about sort of when we change the language that we say to ourselves around pressure. I was talking to Daniel Priestley and he said, my sense is that people talk themselves into pressure. And I can see that. I can do it with myself if I'm not nourished enough.
Yeah. Yes, pressure suggests it's not a good thing. I think when you initially reached out and you're talking about, pressure and being your best under pressure, I'm like, okay. I had to think about it. And then I'm like, okay, no, if that's what it is, that's what it means to me, that's how I understand it, then this is who I am, and this is how I deal with it, and this is how I respond, and this is how I use it to drive me. So it's almost it's that nervous energy, that adrenaline, that, okay, I've got things I need to do. I think I am better under pressure because I have stuff I need to do. I need to get done, and I can see it. I can see where I need to go, and I need to get there. So all of that. So yes, we could reframe language.
Yeah. Brilliant, Tendai. This is really energizing. Thank you. Which leads me into my two questions that I love to ask a guest at the end, which is, if you were listening to this podcast and you wanted to find ways to be better under pressure, I think we've offered quite a few actually, or you offered already quite a few, but what would be your two pay forwards to people listening to this?
So I think the first one would be, I guess, maintaining perspective. I think there's always something that we need to do, and that's important. Almost don't over catastrophize things. I guess by that I mean, what's the worst that could happen? What's the worst that could happen? And then think through, okay, if I can live with that, or if I can mitigate that, or if I feel okay with that, then that's okay. So just go for it. So it's almost just definitely just go for it. And I think the other one for me then is speak up. So if you are feeling like it is getting too much, or you're feeling overwhelmed, a problem shared, because I think I generally find that if you go to people for help, and if you're open and if you're authentic and you're like, okay, this is how I'm feeling, most people respond positively and are happy to help. So I think don't just hold it, speak up, get help, speak to friends, make sure that you are nurturing and investing in yourself, so that you can deal with. So I think those two, sort of maintaining perspective, what's the worst that can happen? And then also, speaking up about it and getting help.
Well, just on that speaking up, this is interesting. When you have people in your team or people who come to you, what do you think gets in the way on the whole of people speaking up?
I think it's not knowing if they'll be listened to. So you have to nurture that culture of speaking up. You have to make it so that people know that if they speak up, they will be heard. I think people don't if they don't think they'll be heard. So I think that's important. Just to and to be open. And I think I try and with my team, it's really, if you need to speak to me, if you need anything, just come. And even if I can't fix it, let's talk about it. There's just the encouraging that. And most of the time, I think people find as they're talking, they probably have the answers themselves, and they just needed someone to, help them think it through.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. Tendai, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you. No, thank you for having me on your podcast, for actually asking. And I guess, that's how we've come here. So thank you for that.
You're very welcome.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Better Under Pressure with me, Sara Milne Rowe. If you enjoyed it, please do subscribe and let us know what you found useful or what you'd like to know more about. And don't forget, if you'd like to sign up for our fortnightly Pressure Points newsletter, where I summarise key points from each conversation, you can find a link at saramilnerowe.com. If you're interested in any of the practices mentioned, check out my book, The Shed Method. Alternatively, you can find us at Coaching Impact or me on LinkedIn and Instagram. Better Under Pressure was produced by the fab team at Smart Cookie Media. Thanks so much for listening, and until next time, goodbye.